come. So if we kind of say, well, if you follow the allowing process, then that's what the person you are now has followed the allowing process. You've allowed the environment, your parents, the society that you belong to, the events that have happened to you, you've allowed those to create who you are. Instead of
really or not, because if you're unconscious, then how could you have allowed that unless you were conscious? Because consciousness would say, well, I'm aware, thus I made the decision to allow.
Well, the decision part is really difficult because the decisions only come in the gap between what's happened to you and what you do in response to that.
And but that also depends on if you're aware of the process of what's happening to you in the first place.
Yes. So, but the action then it comes like, you see, consciousness is great. To live a conscious life is great, but consciousness in and of itself doesn't give you. It's like if I'm in prison and I'm being tortured. Like, for instance, the example is Viktor Frankl and his book, Land Search for Meaning. Okay, so he was in a concentration camp and during World War II, and he saw absolutely horrible things there. Okay, so if we give him consciousness in and of itself doesn't allow him to do anything. We need to give him the tools and the direction, because that's what he gives in his books. He says, hey, this is what I did. I kind of viewed the world in this way, and thus I was be able to survive in a kind of mental sense of what was going on during that time,
or to endure his torture.
Yeah, and indeed, one might even say that he thrived. I mean, I'm not trying to sort of like belittle what's happened to him, what happened to Victor during that time, but he thrived because he took that. To thrive means to take what's happening to you and make more of it than what's happening to you.
He became very aware during that time.
Yeah. It's like I heard a quote from Nelson Mandela the other day, and it was another one of my favorite teachers, Tony Robbins, was talking to Nelson Mandela, and he asked him that all of those years that you was in prison, how did you survive? Okay, and Nelson Mandela replied that I didn't survive, I prepared. Okay, I prepared for the day when I was released and what I would do and how I would act in the world at that time. And that is like a good example of what we're talking about here. Is like how are you going to prepare yourself? Because now you're sitting in your room or you're sitting in the car listening to this. How are you going to prepare yourself to respond to the world when you leave this environment?
It's a process of creation.
It is. To me, I love the word co-creation.
Co-creation.
Yeah, co-creation. Because what we get from that is there's two elements to it. The co part of it is that there's the world, which is, everything in this world that's surrounding me. And then there's me. Okay. And so we both come together to create the world. Without me, there isn't any world, for me. And without the world, for me to go and act with, there is no me.
Oh yeah, without you, there's no co.
Exactly. So if we embrace that knowledge that, hang on, the handshake occurs because of me holding out my hand and the universe holding out its hand. Then when those hands shake, that is the process of creation. And what I say to people is that if you don't hold out your hand, how are you going to be a part of the creation process? So it's your action.
Kal, that is such a powerful and simple example. I love it. Because that's a great example of co-creation.
Yeah. Because
I think a lot of people disempower themselves, thinking that they're really not co-creators. And like you mentioned before, the Jimmy Stewart film, It's a Wonderful Life, that if I wasn't here, I wouldn't have made that much of an impact. That image of holding out your hand and having someone or something interacting with you is the act of co-creation itself.
Absolutely.
So you are very powerful.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's awe-inspiring when we start getting to this level of thought and this level of kind of like reality. It's awe-inspiring.
Awe-inspiring.
You are listening to Pillar Creation with Kal Malik. We'll be right back after this message.
Authenticity comes in one flavor, the real you. For a workshop or seminar in authenticity or conflict resolution, contact www.authenticityradio.com.
Hi, I'm Pixie Lott.
Authenticity Radio.
You are listening to Slade Suiter.
And now we return to Pillar Creation with Kal Malik.
Now, you mentioned about your authentic self or your spiritual self and expressing this part of you.
Uh-huh.
Is this what we're talking about?
We are.
This sense of awe.
We are.
And this sense of very powerful perception of who you are.
Absolutely.
Well, please, you're on the right program. Go ahead.
But this is where my personal kind of exploration of ideas has come to the conclusion that the heart and our own unique, authentic self is where spirituality is at. Okay, usually spirituality in a kind of like orthodox sense and a religious sense comes from outside. You know, there's religions and there's belief systems and so on that we're born into or that we're kind of, become a part of.
So there's definitely a perception that exists that there's one element that comes from the outside. So people are looking from the outside for their spirituality.
Oh yeah, definitely. Well, we look to the outside for almost everything. Mm-hmm. When do we look for it inside?
Unless you embrace these three pillars.
Absolutely.
I'm a good salesman.
Absolutely, that is true. This is the secret. If there is any secrets out there, and that it's inside. If you start from the inside and move outwards, then you have everything. Okay, and the inside, the center. When you point to yourself, most people will point to the heart, to the center of their chest. Very rarely do you point to your head, and yet that's where you're thinking from, which is where your head is. But most all people point to the heart, and that's who we are. In our true, authentic self is a person that comes from the heart.
Yes, uncensored.
Uncensored, absolutely.
I have a friend by the name of Kal Malik who's kind of like this.
I try to, and I perceive myself to be that way, which is the most important aspect.
So how do you express the spirituality? How do you express your authentic self in a conscious way?
Spirituality, first thing about spirituality is that it's personal to everybody. So if I say that, here's an expression of spirituality, what I'm really saying is here's an expression of my spirituality. And I give the respect to everybody else that when they say that this is X is an expression of their spirituality, then I give them that respect as well. So that's an almost given these days. No judgmental censorship or anything like that. Spirituality is untouchable.
Kal, can I be provocative with you just for a moment?
Sure.
I've heard so often people say that you're born into this world with nothing and you'll leave with nothing. And in this case, I don't believe that's true, because everything that you learn, everything that you rediscover about who you truly are, about life, your authentic self, your spiritual self, all the growth that has taken place, when you die, you take that with you.
Yeah, that is a strange thing, isn't it? It's because it's one of them things where you think, yes, okay, if I look at a person, yes, they are born with nothing because their hands are empty, and they die with nothing because,
Yeah, but in that sense, I take you with me, Kal.
Absolutely.
Because you are part of that life. That you're part of that co-creation.
Exactly.
So
exactly.
you're not so lonely when you die.
Oh no. That's I was almost said unfortunately, but the thing about because we're talking about spiritual beliefs here now.
Yeah.
So
You got to be careful.
You have to be careful because my spiritual belief, is that when you die, you are the absolute opposite of loneliness. You are togetherness.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that is it. There is there is no separation anymore. You cannot be lonely.
Well, it's kind of like a fulfillment.
Yes, it's complete.
Yeah, and say, look at all the work I did when I was alive, and I was getting pretty close. At least I was. Yeah, I can see that. It's kind of a party.
Well, I have this notion about spirituality in the sense that I have like a kind of, if I can briefly just go into this, if that's okay.
If it's brief, let's do it.
I have this thing called the Trinity of Life.
Mm-hmm.
And the Trinity of Life is mind, body, and energy. Okay? And what I say, within mind, body, and energy, within those three things, everything is changeable. Your body changes, your mind changes, your energy changes. Okay, throughout life. Mm-hmm. And what I encapsulate that, what I put a circle around that Trinity and say that and call that spirit. And the thing about spirit is that I say that with spirit, it can never change. It is as it is before you were born, after you're born, while you're alive, and after you die. Spirit is the constant in this ever-changing universe.
And that's true in torture situations, that you can never touch me. You can never really hurt me.
Yeah. If you go into the heart, going back to what we were talking about before and now, and like how the heart is the center of our being, if we go back to the heart, the deeper we go into the heart, the more we go into spirit. And the deeper we go into spirit, the less that this world can touch us. So.
Well, and just the reverse, the more impact you can have on this earth.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the more capacity, the more enabled you are to be able to love other people.
But that's you see, the going into the heart has two kind of like effects. Okay, one is that it takes you closer to spirit. This is only, again, my personal view. But secondly, it takes you closer to who you are. Mm-hmm. And being closer to who you are gives you those features that you were just talking about before, about being more enabled or empowered. Mm-hmm. Is because you lose the tethers that this world puts on you because you're going deeper into the heart. So it's a dual kind of like consequence of going deeper into the heart.
Which enables you to respond.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and respond from who you are. The key is not like kind of, I mean, what I say to people is that if you go into your heart, first of all, my belief is that you will find a place where you can respond in a way that is that the world will sort of, not so much like, but it's kind of goodness, the goodness of life comes from going deeper into the heart. So the further you go in an exploration or in a creation of your heart, the more goodness will come into the world, if you like.
Oh, I like the feel of that. So, listeners, you are in the right place, listening to the right station. Authenticity Radio is an expression of good things happening in this earth, on this planet, because you have accessed and expressing your spiritual self.
Yes.
Yeah, isn't that wild?
Here's the thing, right? How many people can say, this is a question for the audience, right? How many people can say, or you as the listener, can you say that in truth and in honesty, I am a good person?
Oh, look at all the hands raised. Oh my goodness. But yeah, you know what? I have my hand up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it's a very interesting question. Well, the thing is, then we take that to the next level. Okay, so that's great. So you believe that you're a good person. okay, and you can stand up and say that I am a good person, which is kind of like shining. So now you've started to shine a bit.